Hello, how are you?
We're great, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna hop into this. I'm gonna skip formal introductions. I spent some time, I looked you guys up on LinkedIn. I'm gonna skip you guys having to do the song and dance we all call startup pitches. I spent some time with your guys' deck. I took a bunch of notes, and so let's just have a conversation about what you guys are working on.
Okay.
Um, okay, maybe the first part to kind of like jump in here is um, uh, okay, maybe the first place to jump in is who are you guys building this for? And maybe kind of part of the reason is I have an American passport, and so I don't have to do too many visas. It's not so bad, right? And so it's not like I don't know. I don't kind of run into this too much. When I go to Vietnam, I do in China. I don't think I can go back to China actually now that I think about it. But so maybe kind of talk to me about and like Singaporeans like have to do very little visas, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you guys are based in Indonesia. Are you kind of doing it for kind of local Indonesians? And then maybe talk to me about how challenging it is for the Indonesian passport, and that's like a kind of like as a place to start.
All right. Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, sure. So I guess like our thesis comes from personal experience because we're both Indonesians and we
Yep.
have kind of shitty passport
Yep.
because we have to make visa to 100 plus countries. And the more we
A
do it,
hundred plus.
100 plus,
Yeah.
106 to be exact.
Okay. Sorry. This matters, right? So
Yeah.
maybe kind of like let me kind of dig it out. If you guys, I'm just thinking about where do places that Indonesians typically like need to go. Okay, so within Southeast Asia, what countries can you go without? With what countries do you need a visa?
Okay. So within Southeast Asia,
Yeah.
we are between each other visa free
Okay.
until 30 days, up to 30 days. But
Okay.
the top destinations amongst like people
Yeah.
from Southeast Asia have shifted from Southeast Asia to like Japan, Korea, and
Okay,
whatnot.
so that's what I was going to ask. Okay, so you guys, so Japan need a visa,
Yeah.
Korea need a
Yeah.
visa.
Yeah.
Where else
Europe,
do
Europe,
Indonesians go?
Europe countries need a visa. UK need
All
visa.
Europe.
Yes,
All
whole
Europe.
Europe.
United
70% of
States,
Africa.
definitely.
Yes, US
Definitely.
definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so sucks to kind of have an Indonesian passport a little bit. Okay, so building this primarily for kind of Indonesians, people with Indonesian passports. I get that you can build this for other people and all that kind of stuff. I'm trying to kind of just be like, okay, where are these people? Where are they starting? Okay, so Indonesians and these things, and maybe talk to me about what the challenges are for Indonesians in kind of filling out these visas. Some countries visas pretty straightforward. Some are it's kind of a mess. So
Yeah.
maybe talk to me a little bit about and maybe talk to me a little bit about kind of social economics too, right? So I feel like I don't know if you're quite privileged kind of Indonesian and your English is very good and all that kind of stuff. Maybe not as hard, and but a lot of Indonesians don't speak English and this kind of stuff, right? So maybe challenging for them. So maybe kind of give me the profile there.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I think like an average Indonesian would take about 3 months to plan a trip ahead to kind of like almost everywhere because it's like 100 plus countries that we need to make visas to. And then in terms of like creating each visa
You're
itself,
saying the lead time is 3 months to plan.
3 months to actually plan the trip itself, right? And then in terms of like creating a visa itself, we sometimes tend to go to agents, like they have this like small holder agents, like independent reseller agents. The simply because there is no single source of truth. When you look it up at Google or you look it up with LLM for now, it's giving very generic answer. However, the agent itself generally would charge you about 3 times the price.
Yeah.
There's no standardization in price.
Yeah.
So sometimes this agent give you X, sometimes this give you 2X and whatnot. So there is no standardization in price and the lead time is very, very long. So that's kind of like the problem that we're trying to solve right now. There's no single source of truth. The processing is long and then agents is not transparent with the pricing. And even let's say like you already do it with an agent, sometimes you still face rejection and delays. So there's no guarantee and no money back guarantee in that sense. After a long process, then you're gonna not gonna get your money back.
So say for example, like in my case, I used to work in the UK. My whole company is planning a business trip to Argentina, and the whole trip is canceled because my visa is rejected. Yeah, and essentially like loss of money, loss of like huge plan that we've made. And the biggest issue is that imagine me Indonesians living in the UK. I can't go anywhere around there. Every single country need a visa, so I have to plan like literally my whole year to decide like where do I want to go in the next year as Indonesians living in the UK, for example. So those all combined, essentially visa really sucks, and we want to solve it one step at a time. From starting with the information clarity, as even when you browse government website, it doesn't really tell you like exactly what you need. More and more requirements comes from the streets, we call it. And as you start doing it, time is a huge problem, as it's not clear when you're going to get it, and plans can always change. So say I can't just go to the US next week for a conference, for example, while lots of my colleagues in Singapore can, right? So on the other hand, the biggest issue is like when delays and rejections happened, basically all gone, and that's it. So we want to solve it one step at a time, and those are the three key problems.
Got it. And then maybe let's go back to the target customer kind of demographics thing. So you said something interesting, which was Indonesians living abroad. Basically, this really sucks for them because yeah, if you live in the UK, you like can't even go, like you need a visa to go to France, right? Which is like
Yeah.
an easy trip. Okay, so that I can kind of understand that. There's probably another demographic where there are Indonesians living in Indonesia who maybe have a hard time kind of figuring out the visa, or if they don't speak English. So that's like another kind of like kind of use case. Any others that you guys have kind of like run across that I should kind of take note of?
Yes, so our ICP is frequent travelers from Indonesia.
Okay.
So there are around 1 million of those who go to more than 3 countries every single year. And the countries that they go evolve year on year. So it starts with easy countries, Southeast Asia. And then now they go to the second, third wave, Japan, Korea, Europe. And now more and more of those are trying to explore more countries outside of the basic region, right? So we want to focus on this niche, as these are going to grow to like more and more people try to aspire to go to this route. And essentially that's who we're aiming to build our product for.
And that's mainly tourist. They're kind of traveling for tourism. Okay.
Yes, starting from tourism.
Yeah, starting from tourism, although we also now have inquiries to go for like study visa and also work visa.
Oh.
So kind of like a more complicated visa.
Yeah.
But actually, when you go into the visa work, the framework is basically the same. There's a document, you need to verify the document, you need to submit it to the agency or like to an embassy. So that's basically like a framework that we're trying to replicate with understanding of like the tourist visa, but then we can easily replicate that to study or to work.
Okay, maybe talk to me about that. Totally makes sense. You could kind of like move into that space, right? Maybe talk to me a little bit about for these kinds of people who are kind of like traveling kind of more frequently, do they use you? Do they use you when they've never been to that country before? And if they're going back, do they use you again? Maybe because I'm trying to kind of get at the value proposition. Is it just like it's just easier? Is it just hard for them to understand? Like, what do you guys think the value proposition is for them?
Okay. The biggest value prop for them is essentially saving time, because say first time you apply for visa yourself, you spend like 3-4 hours filling out a form, right? But using Spun, the first time you apply is essentially a 30 minutes process, while the second time you apply, we can reuse all of your travel documents, reuse all your information that we've verified, and you can spend like 4 or 5 minutes on a very complex Schengen visa. So those are the key reasons why they keep on coming back, as the more they use us, the more they're saving time, the faster it gets. And many times, like they start with a country they've never been before or they're not familiar of. And then for those, actually our existing customer, many of them like who have repurchased, like 30% of them is actually going to the same country. So say like they go to like Schengen region, and then they go to like another Schengen region again, and they repurchase through us again. While 70% of them is actually expanding the borders. So they start with like one region and to another ones. But both the value they get the most is kind of like a surprise element to them as well, is that, oh wow, I can reuse this info. This is kind of like my travel wallet, very handy for me to like store all of my travel documents. And many of them just sign in to just download the passport info, download the ID card, whatever, because they store it at Spun securely. They can just use it for various purposes outside of visas as well.
Oh, that's kind of interesting. It's almost kind of like people. I always think about products in terms of kind of like what do people come for and what do they stay for, right? And what do they come for is it's not always the same, and there's inertia with getting somebody to use a new product, right? And so getting somebody to use a product for the first time takes more work than getting a repeat usage. And the thing that kind of dawns on me with your guys' case is I could imagine somebody using your product if they're going to a country they've never been before and it's very complicated, right? And so if I've been to a country a bunch of times, I probably wouldn't use your thing if I already kind of know how to do it. But if I do it for a country that I don't really kind of understand, I put in all of my work, and then it turns out you're like, oh, we can reuse your information to kind of this country that you already know how to do. I'd be like, oh, okay, well, that's easier, right? And so maybe it's like people are coming because something is kind of complicated and you're making it easy for them, but they're actually just staying for the convenience, right? Of like, you already have the information, you're reusing it. which would be interesting marketing plays. Like for your retention marketing, I would kind of do convenience, and then for your kind of like acquisition, I might do kind of like complicated places, right? Um, okay, that makes sense. I think I kind of like, okay, maybe let me talk a little bit about kind of the process in the behind the scenes. And I've built startups before, and so I'm there's probably a bunch of manual shit and like random spreadsheets where you got to do stuff. It's totally fine, right?
Yeah.
I just want to kind of understanding kind of like how it works. Yeah, you can build more software, you can make this easier, blah blah. Yeah, I get it, right? Um, maybe talk to me about kind of like what you guys are kind of like doing now, and then I would also love to kind of understand. You have to kind of play this like game where you're like it takes work to open every new country, right? And so what do you guys got to do in order to do that? So maybe walk me through kind of like what the current process is, and then what do you got to do to like support some new country?
Maybe I'll talk it chronologically. We start with like super manual agent, Dila, agent Krista, gathering of requirement, and then we
Good.
start like
Good.
automating some of the pipeline. So
Yeah.
this information we start gathering, but still it's never enough because there are information from the streets as we do it ourselves. There are things that are not on the internet. So these are the what we're incorporating to our online vector database of requirements of travel requirements globally, right? Afterwards, then we start just simply digitalizing everything really. So from initially like manual form, just like a simplified, more beautiful, non-repetitive form that you can put in through our website. So our first MVP is a dashboard where like people are like able to like fill in all the information online. Then the second iteration is like make it reusable for next time as our first customer are happy and they already want to apply for the next visas. That's how we kind of like iterate on it. Next, more and more people coming in, things are getting overwhelming. Our operations initially broke down once that we start to like, look, it's time for automating the verifications, right? So we're creating automations to like, say, parsing the information that you've uploaded in your documents, automatically verify if this is not a passport, if this passport is fake and whatnot. So that's one of the mode we create like AI and automation in visa processing. While on the other hand, we are creating a very easy channel for our partners who are creating the permits itself. So say VFS, we initially work super manually with them, but now VFS are using our dashboard now in Indonesia. So that every applications that goes through us is already been verified, pre-checked, and they just have to like print everything manually. So from their side. So when people come to the visa centers in VFS, like they just have to bring their body and like everything else is prepared. And that's it. So from that, more and more, essentially like how to automate this is kind of like a three-way process. So one is like what I said, like bottoms up, where we're gathering all of the information possible. Second is like top down, so more and more actual official partnership we're creating, in which Krista is leading the effort, say with VFS is one of them, Indonesian immigration is next, and more and more coming soon, hopefully as we start scaling up. And third is from the streets. We always say this from the streets because that's literally where the biggest hurdle is. You will never know unless you do it, and most of the insights are from the streets.
Got it. Okay. That's helpful. And look, you're gonna slow march. You should do all manual stuff in the beginning, and then you can slow march kind of like the automations as you need more scale. I feel like sometimes people like over automate in the early days, and then it bites them in the butt.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe kind of switch kind of like maybe just like switch topics a bit. Where do you guys how are you guys getting your users? Like how are you acquiring them, channels? Maybe talk to me about that.
Yeah, sure. So like I can also talk it through from like how we do it before and now.
Yeah,
So
great.
like before, what we did is that we kind of study all the Indonesian immigration processes, and then we went to Bali for like a 1 week trip, and then we basically just like open a seminar, ask us anything about visa, and then we kind of try to clarify all the information that has been like an FAQ in the group, and then so basically that's how we kind of get our first customers from the expat communities, right? And then once we actually understand like what are the questions and how we process like the Indonesian visas, that's kind of like the framework of like how we do outbound visas, meaning like Indonesian to like 70 countries for now. So basically that's how we kind of evolve in terms of process. And then after that, as we have more services, then we can actually aim different people who likes to travel, and then we can also aim different people who wants to study abroad. And then also now we are working with like other travel agents. So right now our customers are not only the B2C customers where we kind of like go from communities and digital marketing, but we also have a GTM in the travel ecosystem itself. So we identify which organization who sends people abroad a lot. Let's say, for example, education institutions. Like there's this one big customers, Isaac. They send internship 10 to 15 internship every single month, and then so basically we help them with all of the internships visas, and then after that they would recommend us to universities that does internships as well. And then now we're also doing a reseller dashboard in which we are having like seminars. We also having like participating in like travel fairs where we actually onboard travel agents and independent resellers to actually use our platform, and basically they become our lead generation and we give them some kind of referral.
Do you think the more of the business is going to come from kind of like businesses and organizations, or do you think it's going to be more consumer?
So
And sorry, let me preface this in saying I'm just asking what you guys think now. Like you're going to change your mind in like 3 months from now, and it's like
yeah.
fine. I just want to know what you guys think now, right? So which one do you think?
Yeah, honestly, like in high peak travel season, it's going to be predominantly consumer.
Yeah.
But in low peak travel season, it's going to be predominantly B2B. That's what we learned. And we learned the hard way as well, as last month we faced our first dip on the B2C. Because of course, people plan 3 months ahead, right? And like there's Christmas holiday, like Chinese New Year, the planning session is done. And now the B2B segment is actually rising. So this is where like, that's why we need to balance both to make it kind of work. But for now, we think depends on the stage really. Say if you talk to us in January, February, maybe our answer will be B2B all the way. But say if it's like April, May, B2C. But again, we need to acknowledge that the seasonality trend of travel and yeah. So essentially both are important in different times.
Yeah.
It's actually interesting that I think the business travel and consumer travel are inversely kind of like proportion, right? So if a lot of people are like during kind of personal travel season, all the business travel like Christmas right now, right? It's tons of kind of personal travel, but all the business travel is like coming
Yeah.
down, right? So they're
Yeah.
kind of like inverse. Okay. Okay. The business side, I kind of understand. What are you guys doing on the consumer side? How are you kind of reaching out to consumer kind of like people who kind of need this? Maybe talk to me about that.
Yeah. So initially everything is kind of super manual. So we post
Yep.
in our socials and like comes from like referrals and like friends
Yep.
who start using Spun. But now mainly like our way to reach our customers is digital marketing. So
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely we do social media, we do SEM, and then we also parse that depending on like the destination of travel. So for example, people who are coming to Indonesia, they usually just Google search it. So we put a lot in SEM, and then for social media, Indonesia do a lot of Instagram, so we do a lot of Instagram ads. However, at the moment, due to resources as well, we are quite mindful about like how we spend in digital marketing. Our CAC, for example, right now are still like 10 to 15%, which is still manageable. And that's why like we're also like very careful in terms of like growing. We want to grow like 10x, we want to go 100x, but we want to also make sure like other North Star, let's say for example, the turnaround time, the approval process, the refund process. So we kind of want to make sure that everything is kind of put in place before we grow even faster.
By the way that I managed that from our companies in the past is I set must-have targets for all of those things. So like SLAs, refunds, all of this kind of stuff. And I basically tell my teams, we will focus on growth unless we breach one of these things. And if we breach one of these things, we will not focus on growth and we will fix it, right? And then we will kind of go back and grow. So we kind of like teeter back and forth. But those tend to be my kind of like metrics where I'm kind of like, okay, we will hit the gas as long as all these metrics are kind of like where we want them to be. And the moment they're not, we pause the growth, we go figure out the scale problem with that, then we kind of get back on and that made it very easy to just like,
not a lot of people say that.
Yeah.
So that's very exciting to hear because
Yeah.
that's kind of like where our stance is. Like we have
Yeah.
a North Star metrics. We want to have
Yeah.
like a certain consumer experience that we kind of maintain. But like other VC would say, no, like just grow.
No. It's because they haven't started companies before. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Our approval rate is at 99%.
Yes.
Managed to make sure most of the applicants are getting their visas on time.
Yeah.
So for us, when we were kind of building, I mean, I didn't have as my companies didn't have as much kind of operational component, but mine was retention. If we were building a consumer app and the retention was getting too low, I had a minimum amount where I'm like, hey, the 90-day retention can't drop below this, right? Because and anytime you're growing really fast, your retention always drops because you're expanding to more and more people that like maybe are outside your target market, and so you always have to kind of. So anyway, retention was always kind of my measure. I'm like, we will pause working on growth to get our retention kind of back up. Once we figure that out, we'll kind of hit the gas. But same thing applies for you, you guys here. Okay, maybe one last topic here is I was looking at you guys as kind of, I didn't even know this whole brand of kind of products existed. I just maybe I'm going to Japan soon, so maybe do I need a visa for Japan? I don't know.
No, you
I don't think so. No.
Okay. I know. I guess like the U.S. government has like so much presence in kind of Japan. Okay. Maybe talk to me a little bit. I didn't know all these companies existed. I was looking at your guys' competition slide, and I was kind of like, oh my gosh, there's like all these things. We don't need to talk about the whole agency stuff because they're obviously kind of like you're going to compete against them. They're not the future, so I don't care. There's Atlas, which is surprising. It's like there's Atlas, and then there's Go Visa, which apparently is kind of pivoting into this kind of recently. It's very early in the market, so I'm not going to be like, oh, how are you going to beat some incumbent? It's so new. It's like everybody's going to fight for this. Is there something when you look at their products where you're like, hey, I think we're going to win because of this?
Yep.
And maybe not Atlas as much because I feel like that's based in India.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. How do you guys think about this? How do you guys think about the competition?
So the biggest asshole at the moment is VFS. VFS
Is what?
Yeah.
VFS?
Yeah. So VFS is the
Why?
worst rated NPS product in the whole world, like 3 years in a row or something, like especially during COVID times. So what they do is they're the official government partner for like 100 plus governments in especially the European countries. So Indonesians who want to apply to like Schengen countries have to go through VFS. Right. And the biggest problem with them is that they're not transparent with the whole process. The whole like document verification is a pain in the ass. Whenever rejections happen,
That's like a monopoly.
That's
That is a
literally a
monopoly,
monopoly.
Right? If you have to go through them. They can do whatever the hell they want. They don't have to be good.
Yes. And the second, amongst VFS segment is also BLS, who handle like Spanish countries visa, and also like TLS, who handle like France. TLS from China, BLS from India, VFS from India, but they have offices all around the world now to like do that, established since like 10 plus years ago. So their process are all very very manual and very very like legacy products. We've seen like their dashboard, their whole system and all that, and it's just bound for disruption, really. And our thesis is that crossing borders shouldn't be this sucks. Yes, there are controls needed, there are ways to verify that is necessary, but shouldn't be this bad. And seeing how they've been innovating year on year, which is practically nothing, we believe that we should disrupt that.
Okay, I'm just looking them up. Of course, they're owned by Blackstone. Seems like a thing Blackstone would do. Okay, maybe talk to me. How do you unseat them, right? Because, and look, I'm asking you guys to speculate, but if they have deals with some of these governments and stuff, like, and sorry, and maybe let's just take VFS. What do they like? What's their deal? With all the European countries?
Yeah, with all the European countries, that's probably about 60 plus governments, not only European countries.
Okay.
So like their thesis is at first is basically you don't have to queue. You don't have to queue in the streets because that's how we used to queue. Like we used to queue in the embassy and it's just a very long queue. And then VFS offers just like, how about if you queue in a mall? So what they're trying to build is kind of like a queue system. It's kind of like a website for each of these governments. So we're not saying that VFS is not aspirational, in terms of like market cap revenue. There are someone who, like we really want to be aspire as VFS. However, like in terms of like the process itself, we are sure that we can do it like 10 times better because like we have kind of like the depth right now on like all of the information like from the streets bottoms up and also top down. So we kind of sure that even though they are like very aspirational, this is something that we can go to as well, as we are also making pipeline to work with governments. So for example, the law in Indonesia just last month, they announced that they actually open for third-party vendors. And this is something that we're going to build upon. Like we want to be the #1 visa platform in Indonesia and also get kind of like their buy-in to become one of the competitor and not just VFS to monopolize the region.
Yep. And one of the core difference between us and VFS is that VFS main client is government. Our main first client is consumers, because their blind spot in the early days is that thinking that they gain all the monopoly, but forget that the users can be angry and can that could like be a big part that would cancel out their business. And we can pivot the other way around. Say if someone is not eligible, then we have to be really transparent why, aside from like what VFS did to a lot of people, including me, like 3-4 years ago making visa to Netherlands, is that because we think you're not going to come back to your country. And I'm like, what? Why? Like like I have enough saving and whatnot. So
maybe I'll share one story that makes me kind of think about what you guys are kind of working on. So, in our batch in YC, gosh, I just looked them up in there now. This is 10 years ago, so I just saw an article with them for 10 years ago. There was a company in our batch called Checker, Check, and then with just with an R, and they do background checks in the United States, right? And background checks in the U.S. were not automated. There's not automated. There's no software, and so you had to go to the courthouse. You had to like file this thing and whatever. By the way, and so what these guys did was they made a software interface, and so the customers could ask for it, and they would be like, okay, we'll deliver it in kind of like 24 hours or something like that. And the reason why it was 24 hours because the founders would actually go down to the courthouse with all of the like requests, and they would like get it, digitize it, and then put it into the like the portal. So to the customer, it looked like it was all kind of like electronic and kind of that, but it was actually like the founders like running down to the courthouse and
Yeah,
doing this
that's
thing.
us running.
Right. And they did that for a while. And at some point, they became so big in background checks that then they did so many of the background checks for the courthouse. The courthouse actually started using their software. And so it went from them having to go to the courthouse to actually the courthouse would just use their software. And then it actually became kind of like programmatic, right? And this happens kind of all over kind of the US with all the different courthouses and stuff. So as they got bigger, they could actually kind of like work more with these courthouses and all that kind of stuff. And long story short, I just looked them up. The company's worth 5 billion now.
Yeah.
And so as you get bigger, you can kind of like start working on some of you guys have to do all the manual stuff and you're going to have to do all that stuff. That's fine, right? And like, but there is a world where you kind of just get if enough of the visas are actually coming through you can actually kind of extend some sort of kind of like power on the governments and kind of these kind of stuff, right? So that would be like such a cool place to kind of get into. Okay, this is super helpful. I took a bunch of notes. Thank you for talking to me about what you're working on. We're going to talk about your company on Tuesday, and then we should be able to kind of give you guys a response pretty quickly after that. My email, I think, is in the calendar invite. Feel free to email me whatever kind of like questions you have about the program, something I said, whatever. I like to spend all of our time kind of like talking about what you guys are working on, but like any other kind of like potential relationship, you should vet me. You should figure out kind of like if we're kind of like the right people for you. I always tell startups to do this, but if you want to find out if we're good and we have good advice. And so I always tell startups, I'm like, look, you should put us to the test. Like whatever is your guys' biggest challenge, you should email me and I will give you kind of like what I think you should do. And you can kind of find out whether it's like the advice is good or not. And if it's not, don't join, right? Like you want people who kind of like you think can help. And so put people to the test, right? So you're more than welcome to kind of like do that. I would love to kind of like help with that. But other than that, I really appreciate your time. What you guys are working on is really cool. So let me just go talk to my team and then we can kind of get back to you quickly.
All
All
right.
right.
Cool.
Cool.
Thank you.
And have
See
a
you.
good day.
See ya.
Bye-bye.